Hello. How are you? Hey, guys. Questions?
James, the pads came on a few days ago. How did you see the team respond, and how would you kind of characterize what they brought to the field through 4 sessions?
Yeah, I think pretty good. I think the young guys aren't as physical right now as I think they need to be because they're thinking. But overall, I've liked how we practiced. As you guys know, kind of talked about this in the press conference a little bit, but we got some guys that are limited, which I wish we had everybody out here healthy, flying around. But overall, it's been good. Obviously we scrimmaged a little bit this past Saturday. It'll be interesting to see the step we take from the first live day to the second live day to see if we can play faster and more aggressive.
Something that's very noticeable compared to last spring is how the numbers on the offensive line. I mean, it was a struggle last year. It seems like that's an abundance of bodies over there now. How does that change what you can accomplish here in March and April? And ultimately, what does it mean for your roster this fall?
I think it helps. The issue is, the challenge is you get the numbers at O-line and then you're limited with numbers at other places. We haven't really had a year, I don't know if anybody does, where you got the right amount of numbers at every single position. But for that group and for the D-line, I think it's been a real positive. There's really good competition. And I think you guys see, just even physically looking at them, it's just a lot of guys that look the part in terms of size, athleticism, to be able to compete. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And then obviously having the 3 young guys here early helped. And we got one more still coming.
How does installation go with 2 young quarterbacks versus a guy like Sean Clifford? I know they've been in the system a year, but are things different this year? Can you feel like a difference in how practice runs and things like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the installation is a whole lot different because a lot of the spring is really kind of laying the foundation for the summer camp and the fall. But yeah, obviously when you got a veteran kind of running the show, showing everybody else, how we operate and how we check the run game or how we handle protections and things like that, there's obviously a ton of value because he's setting the tone for everybody. But to be honest with you, Drew and Bo have been really impressive so far. You can tell they've worked at it. And Jackson, is doing some really good things. He's still got work to do, but he'll be. I think we'll be pleased with him by the time training camp comes if he continues to invest and prepare the way he is.
You talked back a few weeks ago about how you felt like the transfers fit in during winter workouts and things like that. How do you feel like they fit in now that you've had them in the field?
Good. It's obviously different when you get out here, and it's interesting talking to those guys too. When they compare and contrast the differences of the programs, that's been interesting. But it's been good. They've brought a real veteran presence. I think Storm is a guy that's got tremendous maturity. He knows how to practice. He made a play today where, we threw the ball to the flat in the cloud coverage and he came up and supported and really could have took a shot, but knows how to practice, where he showed everybody on the field that he would have made the tackle and it would have been a big hit, but he didn't take the unnecessary big hit on his teammate. He's really earned everybody's respect by kind of how he's gone about his business, right away. So I think he's a pretty good example of it, and I think the other guys will just continue to gain confidence and get more comfortable as time goes on.
James, I think in a bit here we're going to be talking to Keandre. What's that next step you're looking for him to take, whether that's this spring or going into the summer, something to build on for him?
He's been really good so far, this spring. We need him to be the guy, like a true number one. Not just at Penn State, but really in the conference, and a guy that people are talking about nationally. Trey's also, I think, has had a really nice spring camp so far. We got to figure out who that third guy is going to be. There's going to be a competition really with all of those guys, but I think that's probably one of the big question marks between now and the first game. Is who is going to be that third guy that's going to separate. There's a number of guys that I think are battling for it, but who's going to separate themselves from the pack and be a true number 3, or are we going to rotate that position all year long? We'll see.
James, are there any of the mid-year enrollees who have kind of been standing out that maybe you're a little bit surprised by? Because I get, you see the numbers from testing and whatnot, but once you get them on the field, is there anybody that's kind of like giving you a little bit of a wow
Yeah,
moment?
it's hard because if I say that, I'm going to miss somebody. Obviously the 3 young offensive linemen have been impressive. They really have. I think the 2 young linebackers have been impressive. Elliott Washington had a play yesterday that I showed the entire team that was really impressive from a competitive standpoint. So, there's examples, but it's still kind of early to tell, and we'll see how this whole thing plays out. But I'll have a better idea of that come the later part of spring.
Yeah.
Who's filled the vocal leader role that Sean kind of picked up now?
Yeah, to me, one of the things we've talked about a lot is you're not really going to replace. We had a couple 6-year guys, we had a couple multiple-year captains. Leadership is not going to look the same every single year, and especially when you're replacing a guy like PJ, and you're replacing a guy like Tig, and you're replacing a guy like Sean, who were in that role for a long time. You're not going to replace that with like 1 or 2 guys. It's probably going to be more leadership by committee. And I think we can still have just as good leadership, and it's going to look different than it did last year.
I guess
James, what has stood out about Malik McClain since you've seen him take the practice field?
Yeah, obviously he's big, he's strong, he's fast, he's competitive. He's been very competitive in winter workouts. He's been very competitive out here. Those are the things that have stood out at this stage. As I think he gets more comfortable, he'll have a chance to take the next step. But just his combination of speed, size, and competitiveness is probably the thing that jumps out.
Now that he's had about a week with the job, how have you seen Deion Barnes adjust to D-line coach? And how exactly does that adjustment period work, like in the first few weeks?
Well, when you get hired, like, the day before spring ball starts, there's not a whole lot of adjustment. You're just kind of jumping right into it. But you got to remember, he's been here for 3 years with us. He played for me. So culturally, he understands kind of what we do, how we operate. But there's a difference between being a complimentary guy in the room to it being your room. And that's kind of what I had said, I think, to you guys about like even Deion thinks he's going to be the same Deion. He's not going to be the same Deion. It's a different role. It's different responsibility. There's different pressure associated with it. But he's been good. As you guys know, I usually get in early. He usually comes in early into my office, and we have a discussion about feedback from the day before. He's asking a ton of questions to the veteran coaches that we have on the staff. And then obviously we got Torrance Brown back, who's another former player who's working with him in Deion's old role. And then we have an analyst that's been in that room now going on 2 years, so that's helped as well. A veteran guy with experience that I think is a complementary piece. So it's been good, but there's really not an adjustment period. You just kind of jump right into it and get going.
Are you
2 more guys.
satisfied with that number in terms of analysts? And obviously there's been a lot of turnover in college football with that position, but you guys have often been able to get guys from other programs who've turned out pretty well. Are you happy with the number, and what are some of those things maybe behind the scenes that those guys do that we wouldn't otherwise know?
Yeah, we haven't filled all the positions. We've lost some guys that we haven't filled yet, and typically they would have been filled, but my focus was on hiring a D-line coach that went longer than anticipated. So we still have some positions open, and then we also have some flexibility just based on, the guys that we hire and what their contract situation is like. So, we could add a few more. We'll see how that plays out. There's some guys that we're in conversations with, some guys that we're going to invite up to spring ball. Some guys that were waiting to see if they were going to get picked up and hired in the NFL, or so on and so forth. So there could be a few more guys still added to the roster. And then in terms of of what they are able to do, it's all the behind the scenes stuff. And then it's hard for me to answer that question specifically because, it's not like, you lose someone and you take that next person and just plug them in. It's based on their experience. So like what Wiz was able to do and what Coach Rocco was able to do was based on their experience as head coaches as well as defensive or offensive coaches. So depending on who you hire, you're making your decision based on their job description and their responsibilities to take advantage of their strengths.
James, you mentioned last week the opportunity for some of the tight ends that are more unproven on the field because of what's going on in that room right now. How have you seen Khalil, Jerry, and Joey kind of seize that moment and seize those reps?
To your point, when you guys asked earlier about a guy that's standing out, Khalil, I think, would fall into that category. He's been really good. One of the things I talked to the guys about is, one of the things I believe in, and sometimes these guys don't understand because this is the only place they've ever been, so they don't know, but like everybody's getting a ton of reps. And that doesn't happen everywhere. A lot of times, even in spring ball, not everybody's getting reps. And same thing in training camp. Everybody's getting reps. And then some of these guys are getting a ton of reps because there's injuries, and then they either don't know what they're doing or they want to be dramatic about the amount of reps they're getting. And nobody cares. This isn't high school anymore. Nobody cares. Get the job done. And then on top of that, these are the same guys that during the fall are going to be complaining that they're not getting reps. They got the reps right now. They need to take advantage of them and show everybody that they got a chance to compete here at a high level. And that's kind of the adjustment right now for a lot of the mid-semester guys, but really also a lot of the freshmen last year that may not have played a bunch. They got to understand what they have to do and how they have to compete at this level to be successful day in and day out.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate you.